When I refused to let my father move in after years of no contact, he took me to court for filial neglect. He told the judge. She turned her back on blood. I lost. Temporarily. But then I found the letters he had written. Decades of abuse, blame, and abandonment. I collected them all. At his appeal, I handed over a file marked Unsent Evidence. The room went quiet when the judge read the first line out loud. I grew up in Yonkers, New York. One of those old row houses near the corner of McLean and Central. I don't remember a single day feeling safe in that place. My father was a sanitation worker with a temper like gasoline. My mother? She was quiet, nervous, always smoothing out her apron or brushing crumbs off the counter. Like maybe if she kept everything clean enough, he wouldn't explode. But he always did. Sometimes it was over nothing. I'd leave my shoes by the door, forget to rinse a plate, or ask him something during a game. He'd go red in the face, and his voice would drop before it rose. That was the warning. And then he'd start, yelling mostly, throwing things sometimes, hitting when he felt like it. My mom never stepped in. She'd take her place in the corner, mouth tight, eyes low. Looking back, I realized she was just trying to survive too. When I was 7, she left. Said she was going to the store. She never came back. I found out years later she'd moved to Massachusetts and remarried. Never reached out, not once. So it was just me and him after that. And he got worse. He'd drink after work, come home reeking of trash and beer, slump into the recliner, and bark orders like I was some kind of servant. I made dinner, cleaned up, did my homework in silence. Every day I counted the months until I could leave. I got my first job at 16, bussing tables at a greasy diner a few blocks away. Every dollar I made went into a box under my bed. I lied and said I was saving for college books. Really, I was planning my exit. I applied to community colleges far enough away that he couldn't just show up. Got into one in Buffalo. Told him a week before I left. He didn't even look up from the TV. When I moved out, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in my life. I never gave him my address. He found it anyway. Started sending letters. I still remember the first one. 3 lines written in all caps. You think you're better than me? Running away doesn't change blood. I didn't reply. I threw it in a drawer and forgot about it. But the letters kept coming. Sometimes months apart, sometimes weeks. Always the same tone. Rage dressed up as guilt. Some were sarcastic apologies, like he was mocking the idea of saying sorry. Others were just rants. He called me ungrateful, a traitor. Once he accused me of leeching off strangers when he found out I had a boyfriend. I saved every letter. I don't know why. Part of me didn't want to give him that power again, but another part, the scared little girl who used to sleep with the closet light on, wanted a record. A paper trail. Proof I wasn't making any of this up. Years passed. I met Malik during a night class. He was steady, kind, nothing like my father. We got married in a quiet ceremony and built a life. 2 kids, a home in Mount Vernon, a decent job in healthcare administration. I didn't talk about my father. I had buried that chapter. Until last fall. I got a phone call one afternoon while I was making dinner. Some woman named Sharon. Said she was my father's wife. I didn't even know he had remarried. She said, "Your father's not well. He's got diabetes, heart problems, he can't manage the stairs. He wants to move in with you." Like it was just that simple. Like he hadn't terrorized me for half my life. I said, "That's not going to happen." She said, "He's your father." I said, "Not anymore," and hung up. 2 months later, I was served at work. A sheriff came in, asked for me by name, and handed me a thick envelope. I thought maybe someone had died. But it was worse. My father was suing me under New York's filial responsibility laws. Laws that are almost never used. Basically claiming I had a legal duty to care for him, because I had the means. Because I was blood. I was floored. My hands shook reading the paperwork. My lawyer told me not to worry, that the law was rarely enforced. But the judge didn't see it that way. My father came in looking like a ghost, weak, soft-spoken, all dressed up in pity. He told the judge I had abandoned him, that he had tried for years to reconcile, and that I was too proud to forgive. It made me sick to hear him talk like that. Like we were a normal family with a rough patch. Like he didn't ruin my childhood. The judge ruled against me. Said I had to provide temporary financial support until the appeal hearing. Said the law might be outdated, but was still on the books. I felt like I was drowning in a past I thought I'd left behind. That night, I went into the attic and pulled out the letters. The ones I'd shoved into a plastic bin over the years. I sat on the floor and read them one by one. They weren't apologies. They were reminders. Threats. Gaslighting. Manipulation. And I'd kept them all. So, I organized them. Labeled them by date. Highlighted the most disturbing lines. Had copies made. Put them in a binder and labeled it Unsent Evidence. When we went back for the appeal, I brought that binder. My lawyer handed it to the judge, who looked confused at first. Then he opened it. Read the first page. Then the next. And then, out loud, he read, "If you had been born a son, maybe I wouldn't have had to hit you so damn much." The courtroom went still. The air changed. And for once, I wasn't the scared kid in the corner anymore. I was the witness. The judge didn't say anything for a long time after reading that first line. He just stared down at the page like it had punched him in the stomach. My father sat across the room in that wheelchair he didn't need most days. Back slouched, lips tight, eyes darting. My lawyer spoke up. "There are over 40 letters, Your Honor. All written to my client. None of them mailed with a return address. They document years of emotional abuse, intimidation, and attempts at manipulation." The judge flipped a few more pages. His eyebrows lifted at one point. He read silently, lips moving just slightly. Then he closed the binder and looked at my father. "Mr. Darrell," he said, calm but cold, "did you write these?" My father didn't answer. Sharon, sitting behind him, leaned forward and said, "Your Honor, my husband was struggling with grief at the time. He lost his job, his first wife left him, he cut her off. I'm not asking about context yet. I'm asking if he wrote these." My father finally spoke. I was trying to reconnect with her. It was emotional. I may have said things I didn't mean. 47 letters, the judge said. Across 23 years. Many of them contain threats, slurs, and descriptions of violence. That's not reconnecting. That's harassment. I felt something shift in me then. Like part of the weight I'd been carrying since childhood had finally lifted just enough to breathe. But it wasn't over. After court, Sharon cornered me in the hallway. She waited until Malik had gone to pull the car around. She grabbed my arm and hissed, "You think you're clever, huh? Digging up old skeletons." I pulled away and said, "I didn't dig anything up. He sent them to me. I just never let the world see what I saw." She looked at me with pure disgust. "You just want to punish him. He's sick. He's dying." I said, "He was dying when I was 8 and locked in a closet for crying." She slapped me. Right there in the courthouse hallway. 2 security officers ran over. I didn't hit her back, I didn't need to. One of them asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no. Let her feel what it's like to lose control in public. Let her show the world what she really was. But word started to spread. Apparently my father had told everyone in his building that I was a deadbeat daughter. Neighbors. Old church friends. Even distant relatives. People started calling me. One of his cousins I hadn't spoken to since childhood left a voicemail saying, "Shame on you. Family is family." So, I started mailing copies of the binder. Not the whole thing, just a handful of the worst pages with dates. With his handwriting. I sent them to anyone who called or messaged me with judgment in their voice. I included a note. This is what blood meant to him. Then came the letter from Adult Protective Services. Sharon had filed a complaint, said I was neglecting my father's medical needs now that the court was forcing me to pay. Claimed I wasn't delivering the money on time, that I was endangering him. I had to prove I'd made every payment. Bank records, receipts, statements. They came to my house and interviewed my kids, my husband, my neighbors. Humiliating. I had to open every corner of my life because the man who'd bruised my arms and screamed me into silence was now pretending to be the one who needed protection. That's when I made a choice. I was done defending myself. I started documenting everything. Every payment. Every voicemail. I bought a separate phone just to record calls. I kept a log. I told Malik, if he wants war, he's going to find out I've been in the trenches my whole life. Because there was more. So much more I hadn't even told the court yet. Things I didn't have in writing. But I was going to find a way to prove it. I had a feeling Sharon had a history too, a paper trail of her own. People like them don't just start this late in life. And I was right. I started with public records. It took a few nights and a lot of frustration, but eventually I found what I was looking for. Sharon had 2 restraining orders on record. One from a daughter in Rochester, filed back in 2008. Another from a former neighbor who claimed harassment and verbal threats. Both were closed. No charges filed. But the pattern was there. Then I found something else. A lawsuit. Small Claims Court. 2016, a home health aide sued my father and Sharon for unpaid wages. Said they hired her off the books and refused to pay after 6 months of care. She claimed emotional abuse and threats. It was dismissed for lack of evidence, but the woman had written a long statement. It was attached to the case file. I tracked her down. Her name was Letitia. She lived in the Bronx now, working at a rehab center. I told her who I was. At first, she didn't want to talk. But when I explained what was happening, how my father was dragging me through court, claiming I owed him support, her voice got quiet. She said, I always wondered if he had a daughter. He talked about you sometimes. Not nicely. We met in a diner near Fordham Road. She brought a box. Old journals, notes, even a cassette tape. She said she started recording them for her own safety after a night when Sharon screamed at her for buying the wrong cereal. Then Letitia told me something that turned my stomach. Your father told me once, if my daughter had stayed loyal, I wouldn't need strangers wiping my ass. Like it was your fault he was old. That sentence stuck with me for days. Meanwhile, things at home got worse. My teenage son started getting messages on social media from anonymous accounts. Stuff like, your mom's a liar, and ask her why she hates her own blood. My daughter came home crying because a teacher, someone who went to the same church as my father, had pulled her aside and asked if everything was okay at home. That's when I snapped. I made a new binder, titled it Pattern of Abuse. It included the letters from my father, copies of Sharon's past restraining orders, Letitia's journal pages, transcripts from the voicemail, threats, screenshots of the harassment toward my kids, and that tape. Digitized and transcribed, I sent it to the judge's clerk. I also sent it to the State Social Services Board, to the Adult Protective Services Office that had questioned me, to my HR department, just to make sure if Sharon tried to smear me at work, I was protected. A week later, I got a call. Not from court. Not from the agencies. From Sharon's daughter. She said, I saw what you sent. I got your number from a contact at APS. I want you to know you're not crazy. They did the same to me. My mom lied about me for years. Said I stole money. I've got voicemails. Photos of bruises. If you're going to court again, I'll testify. Then she said something I'll never forget. They taught me blood is a weapon, not a bond. I realized I wasn't just fighting for my own peace anymore. I was exposing a legacy of control and cruelty that stretched far beyond me. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The appeal date was set for March. In the weeks leading up to it, I barely slept. Not from fear, but from planning. Every document was filed. Every witness prepped. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was going on offense. Letitia agreed to testify. So, did Sharon's daughter. My lawyer said it was risky bringing in outsiders, but I knew what I was doing. I had no choice. They were the ones who saw behind the curtain. They knew the playbook. And they weren't afraid to say what they saw. The courtroom was packed. Not because of me, because Sharon had invited half the church again. They sat behind her like loyal soldiers. I didn't care. Let them hear it. We started with the binder. Pattern of abuse. My lawyer laid it out piece by piece. Not just the letters. The harassment. The financial threats. The fake reports to APS. She explained how this wasn't just a bad father, it was a lifelong campaign of manipulation. Designed to silence, to shame, to control. Then Letitia took the stand. She was calm. Steady. She told the court how Sharon and my father had stiffed her on pay, threatened her, screamed at her. She said, I stayed quiet for years because I was scared. But I won't let them do this to someone else. Next was Sharon's daughter. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She looked straight at her mother and said, You hurt people. You lie. You use people. You used me. Now you're using her. The courtroom was dead silent. The judge asked my father if he had a response. He stood up, without the wheelchair. Just stood. Caught. And in front of all those people who came to defend him, he yelled, This is all revenge. She's just mad. I wasn't a soft father. I made her strong. She should be thanking me. The judge banged the gavel. Called for order. But it was over. Later that week, the ruling came in writing. Reversed. Entirely. Not only was I no longer obligated to pay or provide support, but the judge referred the case to Adult Protective Services for a full investigation into my father and Sharon for filing fraudulent reports and potential elder abuse of others. That night, I burned the letters. All of them. One by one in a metal trash bin behind my house. I didn't want them in my attic anymore. I didn't want him in my head. Let the paper turn to ash. 2 months later, I heard my father had been evicted. Sharon left him. He ended up in a state-run care facility. No visitors. No one to push his lies. I didn't check in. I didn't need to. Justice had a face now, his own words, thrown back at him in court. Malik held me as I cried. Not tears of sadness, relief. I'd carried his pain for 30 years. And finally, I set it down.